And oh, man. She's so rude, man. She just interrupts me. And he's back, yo. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the sports on the Positive Tip podcast. I have to say, I think I got your voice pretty good last week. When I did Kenny squared. Anyway, Kenny, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Awesome.
We had a fun time taking some time off and
Yeah.
visiting family. We had a good time.
Yeah, awesome. Well deserved. Well deserved. And so I gotta start by asking you if you picked up on any news while you were out there in just beautiful San Diego, right? One of the most beautiful parts of the country. Because I talked a lot about Fernando Tatis Jr. last week, and I know he apologized in front of his team as well as had sort of a mini press conference in his dugout. But the Padres have been good. I think we expected them to be great. Josh Hader is not even the closer right now. What's the feeling like out there with the Padres?
It kind of feels a little numb because there really isn't much talk about the Padres out there.
Really?
At least kind of from what I gathered. Also, ironically, the Guardians were out there the last couple of days and swept them.
Wow.
If we had stayed an extra day or two, we probably could have caught one of the games. But
right.
It just kind of seems like it's an odd team. Kind of like what you said. I think a lot of people would consider that the Padres won the trade deadline. I mean, you get Juan Soto, you get Josh Hader, you get Josh Bell, but it just really hasn't worked out. Probably part of it is the Tatis distraction, because I know he finally addressed the media, but it kind of seems like there's a lot of weird things going on. The whole thing of why he even got tested positive anyway. And then I don't know if you saw this a couple days ago. He then says, "Yeah, I'm gonna get off-season shoulder surgery."
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I don't know.
I don't know. This, to me, Tatis has kind of been a lesson for me that you should really be careful about giving these superstars big contracts too early. Because the guy got a massive deal. He's gonna be there another 13 years.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he's not going anywhere. Yeah.
No one's taking him now. And I know you talked a little bit about the whole broken wrist thing. To me, what kind of sticks out is he broke his wrist riding a motorcycle in December, but didn't get it treated until he came reporting for spring training in March. How do you not know your wrist is broken?
I don't understand that. There's something off there. I caught that also, and I wanted to give him a little bit of a pass because it is an accident, right? But then I after the podcast last week, I saw that pop up that he didn't get. I don't know how that. I don't understand that, because your wrist is where I've broken a wrist before, and it is extremely painful because that's where all your nerves are at. So there's no way. So there's something weird about his story as well. And did you catch the near brawl that they had with each other when their second baseman makes a bad play, or he holds on to the ball, he doesn't throw it. As soon as he comes into the dugout, Machado gets on his case and he starts barking back, and about 3 or 4 other players are on his case. It's a weird team. And, Bob Melvin is such a good manager. He's one of those managers that has a calming effect. And, but that seemed really odd to me. The whole thing is really odd. And again, I wanted to give Tatis a little bit of a break for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's very young. Number two, an accident is an accident, right? But number three, I didn't want to really give him a break on the banned substance thing, because apparently, when I read further, I might have mentioned this last week, that's one of the top 1 or 2 banned substances that's on the MLB list. And so it reminded me of Gary Sheffield. back in the day because when Sheffield took that bomb or cream, and I believe that he did, it wasn't on their list of banned substances at the time. And so, yet he's not going to sniff the Hall of Fame. He definitely, to me, has Hall of Fame statistics and was a Hall of Fame player. But he rubs on this cream, and part of it he's recovering from some sort of injury or muscle strain or something like that. But he keeps using this, under the tutelage of Barry Bonds. And so, but Tatis, I would think that he should have asked somebody, right? He should have asked somebody in the Padres organization, hey, can I take this? I just it's an odd story, and it's an odd team. So it doesn't sound like they're very passionate about that team.
No, and it's weird because thinking a few years ago, they would have also had the Chargers. They would have had something to look forward to. Now it's basically just the Padres.
Baseball. Yeah. Yeah.
And for the most part, I feel like they really like the Padres.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because also I try to put ourselves in their shoes. Let's say Aaron Judge or Pete Alonso tested positive for a banned substance. It would just it put a huge damper on not only the team now, but the team moving forward.
Yeah.
And especially this is one of those guys where it's oh man, this guy was is starting to become the face of baseball. He's one of those guys that a lot of people are starting to look up towards. He was on the cover of MLB The Show last year.
Yeah.
And then just like that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to bring up one thing with him, and then we can kind of move on. So watching an interview with Pedro on the TBS.
Yes.
One of the TBS pregames. And he had brought up a very interesting point that a lot of the Latin American players that end up testing positive, it might not necessarily be because they're trying to get bulk or anything like that, but it might be because they can't fully read English and they don't understand it. And he didn't give Tatis a pass for that because he said the guy, his dad was a major league player. He can speak really well English. He reads pretty well English, but it is something to kind of think about. Cause when you really think about it, how many non-Hispanic guys do you know that test positive for steroids? It's really not that many.
Yeah, it hasn't been that many of late. It was when it first started, right? Mark McGuire and a few others. And although Rafael Palmeiro is Hispanic, he grew up in Mississippi, if I remember right. So yeah, listen, I'll take that as a point. I think it's valid. And I do think coming from Pedro Martinez, I think it's even more valid because I don't think he would hesitate to really call him out. He seems like he's been kind of an outspoken commentator. So that, this is where, though, even more, you got to check with the team. And, because the team would have said, no, you can't take that. We'll come on in. We'll clear that rash up, ringworm, whatever it was, which I didn't even know that was still a thing. I'm not making fun of it, but I didn't know that was still a thing.
Yeah, you know where he got it from, right?
No.
Apparently, this is according to his dad. He got it after a bad haircut. What? It was in his hair, which to me is still very bizarre, but it does make sense. If I had ringworm in my hair, I'd want to get rid of it right away. But also, you're making over $300 million to play baseball. Anything that goes into your body, you have to make sure it's good.
Yeah.
To me, I understand if you're trying to do it as a sneaky steroid thing, but if you're unsure about something, you have to make sure.
Yeah.
It's not I don't know because at this point, first of all, he's done for the season, but now he's done till mid-May next year.
I know.
And that really hurts a team that has playoff and World Series aspirations.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be amazing if they get that. I said this last week. There's three teams that would be in their way, however it shakes out, right? And the Cardinals are really coming on strong too, but you got to figure the Braves just don't lose. We'll talk about that in a minute, a few minutes. But you got the Braves, Dodgers, Mets that would be in their way, and you can make an argument that the Cardinals are a better team than them right now, as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And you're right. So ringworm, yeah, that makes sense because it does start in the hair. one of your sisters, I remember, had it and had to, had to do the whole thing there. Um, all right, I want to read you. We're going to shift gears, and this is going to be, at least for now, our last thing on Deshaun Watson, because we've talked about it a lot. 11-game suspension now, and I know that all happened when you were out, but I came across the one person who hasn't yet accepted his offer, and I want to just read the letter that she posted, kind of towards him on. I want to say this is the Daily Beast. I got it off of the Daily News website, but I think she posted it on the Daily Beast, and Mike Lupica posted this, and just I think the way he posted it without a lot of commentary is I want to just read it and I want to hear your thoughts on it, because I've already kind of digested what my thoughts are, but I'm anxious to hear what you think because I know you haven't seen this yet. All right. My name is Lauren Baxley. I am a former massage therapist, having quit the only career I have known in May of this year. I was forced into quitting for the sake of my health and life. I have not felt safe providing therapy since before June of 2020. I'm the remaining plaintiff against Deshaun Watson, the Cleveland Browns quarterback who harassed and committed indecent assaults against me. I've rejected all settlement offers, in part because they have not included any sincere acknowledgement of remorse or wrongdoings, nor have they included any promises of rehabilitative treatment. Watson still refuses to admit that he harassed and committed indecent assault against me. Any settlement offer he has made has been a dismissal of his evil actions, and I know that unless there is an authoritative intervention, he will continue his destructive behavior. Because Watson repeatedly assaulted women, the institutions and individuals who currently uphold and employ him must also be held accountable. What's your thoughts?
Wow. First of all, what really sticks out to me is former massage therapist. Um, and I think that's one of the things that kind of gets overlooked is like, yes, there's a lot of like physical and mental trauma that happens in the act itself, but also like the long-term repercussions sometimes kind of get lost. Where I'm sure she's not the only one of these 24, or if you want to go as far as 66 women that have quit the field because of what he's done. But also, like, it kind of still seems that way, that like there isn't really much remorse from him. And and like if we look at it from like a biblical perspective, yes, people have done horrible things. Like you look at David, who he didn't rape a girl, but basically like if you ask a girl to sleep with you and you're the king, you're gonna get that girl.
Yeah.
And then goes and kills her husband and tries to get her husband drunk beforehand so that it looks like the baby is his and not David's. Like horrible stuff. But once David actually had that moment of realization that, oh wow, I really messed up. Like that's where we get Psalm 51, where he's repenting and saying like, I'm sorry. Like Deshaun Watson basically has said, well, I didn't do anything. But like, there's no way that like I would give Deshaun Watson a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. I still wouldn't fully believe him, but I give him more of the benefit of the doubt if it was like one or two. But when 24 women are saying the same thing, like you had to have done something. You had to have at least done something to make these women uncomfortable. And I don't know. I think it is something like if you were to say like, hey, I'm sorry, like I can't believe I've done all of these awful things, then I think it would look a little bit differently. But like it seems like he just doesn't care. And I love that she's made one of the stipulations for her settlement. Like if she were to accept it, it would have to add some kind of rehabilitation. Because like there's clearly like a problem beyond just I'm using my power to abuse women. Why is that the case? And I think like exploring that, whether that's in therapy, whether that's in rehab, whatever that may look like, I think it's important for him as he moves on. Because I'm not even joking. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you or if you've seen this. In Cleveland, I believe it's this weekend, is the National Massage Convention.
Oh my
Um,
god. Oh,
so
oh my gosh.
yeah, not even joking.
You can't make
So
that up, you know?
so we all know now why Deshaun Watson picked Cleveland. That's a joke,
No.
um, but like it's
You can't
something
make
I think he
this
needs to
up.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't make this up. I think you point out the two things that really struck me. And reading this really, sometimes these sports stories really transcend life. And so we're talking about Lauren Baxley. We're talking about her life. She obviously, I don't know what kind of training goes into being a massage therapist, but I imagine she probably had to pay for schooling, for training. She probably had to get licensed to do this. This was probably an occupation that she looked forward to probably doing for the next, 20, 30 years, whatever. And then you have this incident comes up and she's devastated. And there's no place in here that so she's rejected all settlement offers. So obviously there's been money, probably a lot of it, dangled in front of her, and she hasn't accepted it simply because she feels like he hasn't accepted responsibility for what he did. And I'm with you. The second part that really stuck out for me is that she's saying that if there's not anything in there where he gets rehabilitated from this illness that he has, is what she's saying, he's going to do it again. I mean, she's just very simply saying he's going to do it again. So, okay, she could easily take her money and move on. Doesn't sound like she's going to move on in terms of being a massage therapist, but she's absolutely right. And I would think that. So here's my last point here. I would think that there would have been a demand, not a oh please do this. I would have thought that the NFL and or the Cleveland Browns would have said, all right, big boy, we'll let you play again, week 12, okay, against the Texans. But guess what, man? In these 11 weeks, you ain't gonna practice. You can study the playbook, but you're gonna go to rehab for this, and you're gonna get help for it. And we're gonna make sure that this never ever happens again. And it's gonna be for the better of you, because Watson, I think, is only 24 years old, right? So we want him to be a productive human being, right? And I compared it to Michael Vick, obviously very different thing there. When was the last time you heard anything happen with Michael Vick since he came out of prison? But nothing but positive. He's got this whole podcasting network thing going now. He's given millions of money, back to animal shelters and stuff like that. I mean, there's still people that haven't really moved on from him, right? Because remember when he was going to coach, one of the Pro Bowl teams that people were
Oh
protesting,
yeah.
everything like that. I get it. I'm not putting that down because people can, have their own feelings even all these years later. But he's tried his best to move forward. There's not one shred of anything for Watson. And so last thing, I didn't say this last week, and I thought about that Michael Vick had a few people that stood up for him at that time where it wasn't popular to stand up for him. And one I remember being Tony Dungy, one of the model Christians that I've seen in sports and just in life, the way he conduct himself. And he really helped him. He brokered the deal to get him to Philadelphia because he felt like playing football again was going to be a big part of his, recovery. But he made sure that Watson did all the right things, and you sometimes need that. Or I'm sorry, he made sure that Vic did all the right things. I'm not sure Watson has that person in his life yet,
No.
and it seems to me like he needs someone like that. And pray for this lady, Lauren Baxley, and all of the alleged we have to say alleged victims. Because nothing has never been, convicted with him, court of law or anything. All right, let's pivot and let's jump to Mets and Yankees. It was I don't like the. Are you with me on this? I don't like these 2 game series, man. Give me 2 3 game series at least. And or give me something uneven so I could say that hey, one team won the season series.
Yeah.
But it seems like these teams. I think when I saw it, it's probably 77-70 now. Out of all the series that they've played, I think the Yankees have won 77 now, and the Mets have won 70. So the series that they played have been been close. These were a couple of close games. I mean, Lindor has the bases loaded in the ninth inning. They were weird games again. I mean, all these crazy plays happening. With Alonso falling down, poor guy trips up not once but twice. Coming around third base, but Torres doesn't pay him any mind, and he tries to get McNeil at second base. It's just I mean, you can't. These are plays that you just don't see every day. But the Yankees seem to have righted the ship. I mean, they were really going bad, and I mean, I thought they were going to lose all 4 games to the Blue Jays. They wound up winning one, but they seem to right the ship here. Judge has got they won 2.
Yeah,
They won
they won
2
too.
against. Okay, all right. I thought they only won that Sunday game, but that's right. But I
The
thought that
Josh Donaldson
Donaldson.
game.
Oh, okay. Okay. He hit the grand slam, right? The walk-off
Yeah.
grand slam. Okay. And that was the first. I talked about that last week. That was the first game in the series. So I think the Yankees have righted the ship here a little bit. I'm not worried about how the Mets are playing. I think they're playing fine. Listen, Scherzer and DeGrom are not going to be perfect every time they go out. You just can't expect that. And Scherzer battles through it. I think DeGrom is pitching tonight, but I like that they put Walker in there. I didn't have any problem with that. I thought you got to get Walker back on the mound, and he didn't pitch bad. And so it's the only thing with the Mets is that the Braves don't lose. I mean, they just keep winning. So now the lead's only a game and a half going into today because they picked up another half game yesterday. So let me keep quiet for a bit. Give some thoughts on your Yankees and the series. And do you think they've turned the corner back now and we'll get back on a roll here?
I'll start out with this. Well, the Yankees at one point were 4-14 in August.
Yeah,
which was the worst record in baseball for a team that, like, at one point was on pace to win 120 games. Is still like very surprising. But since that point, they're 3-0, which is still kind of crazy. I really hope I can look back and say Paul O'Neill Day was the day that turned this team around. But who knows? We'll see what happens. But a question that I was listening to another podcast and they were saying, what has rock bottom looked like for this team? Is rock bottom the Saturday game when, like, after such a dramatic win, they lose 2 straight again to the Blue Jays? Was that rock bottom? Is rock bottom after losing to, at that point, it was Scherzer and DeGrom against the Mets? I think they hit their rock bottom at this point, and things are starting to turn around. A big thing that I feel like a lot of people keep like glossing over, the Yankees have been awful since the All-Star break. You know who's been gone since the All-Star break is Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah.
He played in 1 game and hasn't played since.
Yeah.
Unless he wakes up with his Achilles hurting, he's expected to be activated today as the Yankees tread out to the West Coast for their last West Coast trip of the year. So Stanton will be back. Britton's not too far behind him. He started a rehab. I know Britton, he's a year removed and wasn't really that good last year.
Yeah.
But he's another arm out there in the bullpen. The Yankees continue to lose guys out there, whether it's Scott Efros, whether it's Clay Holmes, whether it's Miguel Castro's. I don't know when he's coming back.
Yeah.
But I think this is kind of where you start to see the turnaround a little bit. Like you said, it was kind of a weird series, but I think it was a really good one. It's something the Yankees really needed.
Yeah.
Their starting pitching was pretty good. It still pains me to see across in St. Louis where Jordan Montgomery continues to just destroy lives. He had himself a Greg Maddux game, right? Yeah, 99 pitches.
Oh my God.
It's still such a weird trade because also this is a little off topic, but So Bader is still like no timetable for his return, but also when he comes back, like, is he gonna play? Because like you have Stanton's gonna have to play, Judge is gonna have to play. Hicks is probably at this point on the outside looking in. Benintendi, who's played a lot better recently, I think last 10
Right.
games, 345 batting average. He's
Yeah.
been he's been one of those guys that's like he's hit big hits in big moments the last few
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
Um, like you have those three. Where's Bader going to be in there? Is he going to be playing center field, Judge and right, Benintendi left, Stanton DH? But then
No.
that would push either Donaldson
No.
out or DJ LeMahieu out. I don't know.
He's gonna be a pinch runner, late inning defensive replacement in the postseason. That's it.
That's kind of
And
that's kind
he's
of
a
what I
good
feel too.
player. But I think that'll be his role when he comes back.
Um, but like I think one of the biggest keys, you got to get healthy. Um,
Yep.
there's still a lot of guys that are hurt. Severino is scheduled to come back within the next couple weeks. Um, Cashman had said like they hope to get 5 starts out of him before the end of the season. Um, you got to get Clay Holmes and Scott Efros in there because you need at least like usually about 3 or 4 guys that you can fully trust in the bullpen when it comes to October. Right now, I don't know who I trust in the bullpen.
Mm,
Um, Clark Schmidt, but he couldn't get the last out on Tuesday. Um,
right.
I mean, Ed Clark Schmidt's really like a starter, so
Yeah.
he could be like one of those. He could be a guy that kind of piggybacks anyway.
Yeah.
Um, Chapman's been pretty good, but also sometimes he could be a little spotty in the big spotlight. I don't know. Clay Holmes, if he's fully there, he's really good.
Yeah.
Zach Britton's pretty good. I mean, Boone's relied on him, but I think that's the biggest thing is they need to kind of figure out their bullpen. They need to get healthy in the bullpen and just keep taking series. They had lost 6 straight series before sweeping the Mets.
Hard
Once
to
again,
believe.
it's like one of those
Yeah.
things. It's like
Yeah.
unbelievable
It's
because
hard
they
to
went a
believe.
stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's just it's crazy how this team has switched. But also, I think that's a lot of how Aaron Boone kind of manages since he's so hands off. Yes, they can go off and go crazy, but I feel like one of his weaknesses as a manager is when things are going bad, he's a little too cool about it. Whereas Joe Girardi would have like lit a fire under somebody, he would have called somebody out, like he did that with Dellin Betances. He's done that with Gary Sanchez. He'll like kind of call people out very subtly and probably not so subtly in the actual clubhouse. Boone doesn't really do that,
No.
and I think as a result, like a lot of the funks tend to get worse and worse. But I still
Yeah.
think that he can be the guy that takes this team all the way. But we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I, I don't have anything to add to that. I always felt like with the Yankees was health because I also felt with Stanton, you were 100% right. But I think they also started, that was also when, and it was a little bit before that, when they started with their relievers, which was a big, big strength of this team, just started going down like one by one, which was really odd. And then we don't have to mention that trade again, but that was just really odd. And that hit the pitching staff, I think, put a lot of pressure on the starting pitcher. Although Montas looked really good the other night.
Yeah,
So he, maybe he's finally gotten comfortable. That's hard, man. You go from, the A's were contenders the last few years, but not the last like year and a half or so. I mean, they've got, I think, one of the worst records in baseball, if not the worst in the American League, at least. Um, and so I think that I think the Yankees now will, for me, for them, I don't think they're going to get a challenge for the division. So it's a matter of health, setting up that rotation, getting their relievers back. Aaron Boone will figure out where everybody should play and when. You're right. I wouldn't take Benintendi out of that lineup, man. He's playing left field. Yes,
yeah,
he's my everyday left fielder. I'm not taking. And obviously, I have. See my buddy in the background there. Obviously, I have. I've got Judge, who I'm not going to take out of lineup. So two of the three lineup, outfield spots are done, and then he'll figure out the rotation from DH through there. One last thing from the Met. Yankee series. Have you ever seen also that play where where time wasn't called in and they got a base? Did you see that play where the Mets wanted to appeal whether the runner left too soon from third base, and so they had called timeout, but yet Scherzer still threw a pitch, and Rizzo was really upset, and they caught Rizzo saying something to Lindor, which we can't
Oh
say
yeah, I
on.
did see that.
Yeah, I've never seen a play like that before. That's what I'm saying. This game was this series was filled with a couple of like firsts for me. I just that was another one I had never seen. I didn't realize that you call timeout, but how does the pitcher not know that there's especially Scherzer. Scherzer was up pitching, and the Yankees look like they have a hit. And now there's a rally, and I mean Rizzo was livid, because he was supposed to like step off and throw to third base, but just a weird play. You won't see really that really again.
Yeah,
Um,
and I agree. I hate the 2 game series. Like,
yeah,
I think I would like better is if they did like a Thursday to Sunday, where it's say 2 games at Yankee Stadium, 2 games at Citi Field. I know that
yeah,
doesn't work out with every team because like you always have those weird matchups like Boston and Atlanta. Like
yeah,
that's a hard thing to make happen.
yeah,
But especially for like the bigger ones, Yankees,
yeah,
Mets,
yeah,
Dodgers, Angels, Cubs, White
yeah,
Sox. It just feels too
yeah.
or make it a 3 game series. Next year, it's still going to be the same thing.
Uh,
They did release the 2023 schedule. The Mets and Yankees
uh,
play twice,
yeah.
but they're both 2 game series. So
I hate that. And they're packed houses too, man. Both stadiums were packed. Both stadiums were rocking. You put one more game out there. When both these teams are good, man. The fans really come out. I mean, and it's an important series. And so real quick before I get to the Mets, real quick over the weekend, uh, Major League Baseball they blew it a little bit with you had the Braves and Astros all weekend long, and it wasn't the Sunday night game, but I get it. They had the Sunday night game as that little league, game. So I get that. But imagine if the Astros Braves would have been that, but and then the Saturday game, I guess maybe half the country might have seen Astros Braves, but I know here was Mets Phillies, which, of course I want to watch that. But they certainly that wasn't a nationally televised game on Friday night. I thought they blew that, man, and that actually was a compelling series too. The Braves took 2 out of 3 because they don't lose. Um, but I thought MLB blew that anyway. Just also a nutty weekend with the Mets taking 3 out of 4 from the Phillies, especially the Sunday game, which there was a rain delay. But if you took out that like 45-minute or so rain delay, that game was like over 4 hours long. I couldn't figure out why either. On a Sunday afternoon, it's hard to sit there and watch as much as you love baseball. Yeah, I know you would have sat there and watched it. You have the kids are small. You're gonna go out and do stuff with them, and it was just
listen
bizarre.
to
But
it.
the Mets, the way they came back, going into the ninth inning, and I know you're gonna talk about the pitcher in just a bit. I mean, just unbelievable story with him. But Mark Canha hitting a home run, and then Brandon Nimmo, and then for the first time, I think since June something, maybe late June. It was the first run that Edwin Diaz had given up. But thank goodness,
Wow.
yeah. But thank goodness, they had a 2-run lead. He gave up 1 run in the ninth, and they wound up winning that 10-9. So they kind of put the Phillies on the back burner a little bit. Although Bryce Harper's coming back, and apparently he's hitting like 450-foot home runs in the minor leagues. Um, but it was just what I'm seeing from the Mets this year is just one of these special years where they've pulled out these impossible games, which made you think that they were going to pull this out Tuesday night as well. But they pulled out these impossible games, and they've had different guys step up. Mark Canha, who's been just okay. I think it was you before the season said, you know what, Conforto is a better player than Mark Canha because you knew him better than I did. But you said Canha was good, and he has been good. He does his at bats are unbelievable, but he hasn't come up in these big spots until this weekend. He hits the 2-run homer in the ninth inning to put them ahead, and then Nimmo hits a home run that gives them the extra run, which they needed. So So it's just these different guys that have come in and done stuff for the Mets, and it's just turning out to be a special season. But it's a special season for the Braves too because they don't lose. All right, let's pivot to this. I want to start this way. You and I talk a lot about forgiveness, right? That is a biblical principle that you have to have forgiveness, right? I mean, the Lord commands that. But man, oh man, the first conversation, would you like to be a fly on the wall? The first conversation that Kevin Durant has with Steve Nash, you know, it's like this is a coach I have to see every day. The GM he doesn't have to see every day, right? But the coach he's got to see and work with every day. And so news comes down that Durant has decided to stay. The fences have mended. You're not going to get anything as to why Durant asked for the trade in the first place. I really would like to know that. But then I think part of it is just like these teams that you wanted to go to, there's no match. There's no match with Phoenix. I read that Memphis had gotten into the mix a little bit. Him and John Morant would have been scary. But Memphis would have probably had to gut that team too, which is the makings of a really good contender over several years if they hold on to that core. The Celtics, I mean, why would they break that team up after they just went to the finals, and they're still pretty young? So it turned out to be, and maybe they probably went back to him and said, listen, we got nothing, and we're not going to give you away for nothing. And you call this, Durant's not the guy that's going to hold out because he loves to play. And so what were some of your first thoughts, and what do you think that conversation is going to be like?
Well, I'll start with the conversation because I think that is interesting. Like, I can only imagine. Like, hey, I know I said I wanted you fired, but we could still win a championship this year. It just seems very bizarre. Now, granted, I will say Steve Nash is really only there because of Kevin Durant. Like, he has zero coaching experience before Brooklyn, was a rando advisor with the Golden State Warriors, which is kind of how they built that relationship anyway. But regardless, that's going to be because that's always going to be in the back of Steve Nash's head. Is like, this guy did not want me here. This guy does not want to coach under me. If I'm Steve Nash, I'm a little harder on Kevin Durant, at least to start out with, to say, like, I'm in charge here, not you. But I don't know if he's going to do that.
No.
This whole thing is very interesting. Now, I will say, I think as far as Kevin Durant's legacy goes, if he ends up winning a title in Brooklyn, especially this year, like, people look back and like, man, you won a title with Kyrie Irving, who's there and not there the next day, and Ben Simmons, who sat out a year because he couldn't shoot a free throw. Like, people will see him as like, a lot of the KD lovers and LeBron haters will kind of look at it and say, like, well, LeBron never had to deal with all of the chaos that KD had to deal with. And KD only has one less title. So, like, it'll be a huge notch in his belt. If he had gone to, say, a Phoenix, a Philadelphia, a Miami, people would have said, well, just like those rings in Golden State didn't count, these rings here in whatever new city you're in wouldn't have counted. Mm-hmm. So I think, like, his best move for his legacy was stay. Also, there really wasn't a good match.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he wanted to go to a strong contender, he would have been there by himself.
Yeah.
And also, like, and I don't blame the Nets for this. The asking price was astronomical. You're asking for 2 superstars plus draft picks plus a couple role players. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't. That's not going to work. As far as the Nets go moving forward, they had the most bizarre offseason. Mm-hmm. Like, first the Kyrie going, but then not going, but then going, but then not going, and then signing the 1-year extension. Like, he had just a weird time. Ben Simmons, you have no idea what's happening with him. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about him. I'm assuming he should be good to go.
Yeah.
But then it came out that he left the group chat when they asked him if he was going to play.
Right.
And then obviously Kevin Durant has kind of dominated that. I'll say this: winning will cure all. If this team is healthy and if this team plays well together, they can win a lot of games. Do I think they're the best team in the East? No. I think that's probably either Milwaukee or Boston.
Right.
But I mean, the Nets were the favorites going in, and I know they had James Harden in that, but they can make at least the Eastern Conference Finals, if not the NBA Finals. Um,
Yeah.
Really, the biggest thing that can stop them is themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I love your take on his first conversation with Nash. Um, Listen, quietly, because of all this other noise, quietly, the Nets made some really good moves in the offseason, right? They re-signed Patty Mills, who's a championship pedigree, right? Player from San Antonio. They re-signed Nick Claxton, who turned out to be really their only big man and useful big man. Um, they picked up Royce from Utah, who again, you have to be an NBA junkie to kind of know that this guy is a heck of a player. He's a wing player, speed, um, scorer, and really, really good pickup. TJ Warren, they took a chance on, and if you haven't heard much of him, it's because he hasn't played in the last couple of years because of injuries. But when he played, he also was just a lethal scorer from all over the court. So they've picked up some reinforcements and they re-signed some of their key players. And so the Nets now have, I think, a bench, which is what they needed, right? And some role players, because I thought that they just, in when they first got James Harden, they traded away everybody, and I think that hurt them last year, especially, obviously. So I think that had to be laid out in front of Durant, and saying, listen, so not only can we not find you something, but if this team stays healthy and stays together and Kyrie plays, every day and he stays healthy, why can't we contend? We can match up with Miami, we can match up with the Bucks, we can match up with the Celtics with these players, and I think they can. So that had to be part of the conversation, is my guess. Again, the trouble is we won't get much from Durant, and that's fine. He's not under no obligation to tell the fans or anything like that. The thing is that I think if you're a Brooklyn Net fan, you're happy today. I think if you're a Brooklyn Net fan, you just concern yourself about what they do on the court. And if you're a Brooklyn Net fan, you really keep your fingers crossed that Kyrie plays, that he stays healthy, that he stays mentally healthy as well, and that he plays, because he's the key. Because Durant can't, even with the players that they picked up, if Kyrie's not in that mix, they're not going to match up well against the Bucks or the Heat, or the Celtics. I'm thinking that those are the top four teams in the East, let alone when you go out west, man, and you have to play, Golden State and the Lakers and the Clippers, who'll definitely be better as well. So anyway, all's well in Netland. So I don't know. So I want to move on to some special stuff.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, I got to tell you, and I know you love this. So, and I know the audience will love this too. Albert Pujols, what he's doing is just spectacular at his age. And, obviously the Angels felt like he was washed up, but I think he's kind of been reborn almost with the Cardinals. We're not going to think of him as an Angel, right? When he goes into the Hall of Fame, we're going to think of him as a Cardinal. That's where, he won his championships. That's where he won his MVPs. His first like 3-4 years with the Angels were actually very good, but then he seemed to get old kind of quick, and he's kind of been reborn. And this got me to thinking, the Cardinals are such an interesting franchise that we don't talk much about here in New York. And I got to thinking, well, they've had so many great players over the years, right? Pujols being one of them, Ozzie Smith, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson. Um, Even I'll say my guy for his first 5-6 years of his career, Keith Hernandez. That some of the teams in the 60s with Kurt Flood, Orlando Cepeda, Joe Torre, they definitely have quite a tradition. But one of the guys that when you talk about traditional players that never seems to get talked about, and maybe just because of the part of the country we're in, is Stan Musial. And so I got
Mm-hmm.
really curious, and Musial died almost about 10 years ago now, but he seemed like he was such a gentleman, such an ambassador of the game, soft spoken, played his whole career with the Cardinals. So I said, let me look up his stats. And when you think about that era, because he played for around 1941, 42, although his full year was 43, and he played until 1963. And that was kind of, in the 50s, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Frank Robinson, came up, Clemente. Certainly you talk about Mickey Mantle during that era as, the best players, from around that era. He was also around the same time as DiMaggio, so you hear DiMaggio's name a lot more than Stan Musial. Again, it's a different era, right? Because through the 40s and then through a good part of the 50s, the Cardinals were the team that was the furthest west, right? So, you know, places in Oklahoma, Nebraska, where there was no baseball, and even west of the Mississippi, they all listened to Cardinal games because, that I think is KMOX radio station had the biggest, largest signal, back then. On a clear night, you could, listen to a Cardinal game even as far as here in New York. I can remember as a kid, I picked up, you know, uh, Jack Buck on the radio, at times. But I think there's there's some things why Musial kind of gets lost, I think. So let me read these real quick. 1943 was his first big year. He had 220 hits, 48 doubles, 28 triples, 13 homers, 81 RBIs, but he batted 357.
Wow.
Oh, and by the way, he struck out 18 times. And
Wow.
he played every game, by the way. I think that year he had over 700 at bats. I'm just picking a few years. Let's go to 1946. He had 228 hits, 50 doubles, 20 triples, 16 homers, 103 RBIs. He batted 365.
Insane.
And by the way, he struck out only 34 times that year. 1948, he had 230 hits, 46 doubles, 18 triples. He had 39 homers, 131 RBIs. He batted 376. And also that year, he struck out a grand total of 34 times.
Wow.
The guy had an amazing, amazing career. I'll take one more year as he started to get a little bit older. 1955, he had 33 homers, 108 RBIs. He batted 319. So, do you want to know what his lifetime average was? He played 22 years, all with the Cardinals. Lifetime batting average of 331. And
Wow.
I highlighted this here because I think this might be one of the reasons why he gets a little overlooked. He had 475 career home runs. So he wasn't a huge home run hitter. So a couple of those years, he had 16 homers, 18 homers. A couple of years, he bursted out. He never hit 40. Closest he came was 48 when he hit 39 home runs. Um, and think about what the big number was for years and years and years for home runs, 500, right? 500 was that magic number that Frank Robinson hit, that Willie Mays hit, that Hank Aaron obviously shattered. Any of his contemporary sluggers at that time, 500, Mickey Mantle was the benchmark. DiMaggio didn't hit 500 home runs. DiMaggio was kind of, I think, the player that was his peer, because DiMaggio, and maybe we'll bring up his stats next week, because he also was never a huge home run hitter, but he always hit for a high average, a lot of doubles, a lot of triples. There are a lot of players in playing right now that don't have any triples. There are a lot of teams that don't have 20 triples for a year. That's one of those stats that, I don't know why the triple has diminished over the years. It's almost like players are reluctant to try to get to third base Frank Robinson always said, if I hit a ball down the right field line, for me, it was an automatic triple. If I got past the first baseman, it's going down the right field line, he said, I'm gonna make the right fielder throw me out. And most of the time, the right fielder is not gonna be able to throw you out unless it's Starling Marte or somebody with a big arm these days. You know, and so I don't know why players don't try to take that extra base. There's that old adage, oh, don't get thrown out at third base with no outs or with 2 outs, right? Well, come on. You got to take that chance, I would think. So Musial was I'm gonna say, for me, and from when I've been involved in talks with all-time great players or listened to talks with all-time great players, his name seems to never come up. At least in this part of the country. Maybe it does in St. Louis, right? But Musial, to me, it's hard to say, with a 331 lifetime average, a little bit underrated. Just a great guy, and by all accounts, a great human being. Did a lot of great things, for his community as well. Played in St. Louis forever. Anyway, that's my thing. What story do you have? And then I think you might have two. So go ahead, fire away.
Yeah. Well, you asked how many teams have 20 triples. Only 9 teams this year have had 20 triples as a team. The
amazing.
Yankees are a tremendous team in this stat. They have 7 all year.
7 triples all year.
Granted, the Yankees are a bit of a slower team anyway, so getting a triple for like a Stanton or Josh Donaldson's not going to happen. But as I say that, both of them are probably going to hit triples tomorrow.
There were a few players in the 90s where it kind of just stopped. Like Vince Coleman used to get a lot of triples. Ricky Henderson, obviously. Jose Reyes led the league in triples. Obviously, he was more in the thousands. Lance Johnson was the last Met I remember. I want to say he had 25, 26 triples in his 1 year. He played with the Mets, I think, a year and a half. I think they traded him at the deadline the next year for Brian McRae. But he was a triple machine. It might not be that much. Maybe he had like 19 for the year, but that was like huge for even in the mid late 90s. I think that was 97 when he had that big year. So I don't know why that's a lost art. 7 for the year one team has. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, my two stories are kind of 2 in 1. Because something that I think is really interesting is, and these stories kind of happen fairly regularly. Another guy that kind of falls in this category is Mark Appel with the Phillies. But
yeah,
a lot of these guys that, like, to me, their theme is following your dreams. Last night we were reading for Bible study in Galatians chapter 6, where it says, not to give up, because in due time you'll receive the harvest of blessing. And I think that kind of applies for both of these guys. The first guy is Wynton Bernard, who was drafted in the 35th round of the 2012 draft.
Oh my God.
Round that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And he was in the minor leagues for 10 seasons. Let's see here. Starting out with, obviously, the Padres, was in the Detroit organization for a second, San Francisco, the Cubs. And then this past about 2 weeks ago, he got called up with the Rockies. And obviously 10 years in the minor leagues, while most guys, like, I thought of Andrew Jones hitting home runs when he's 19 years old in the World Series.
Yeah.
Julio Rodriguez became, I think, the 4th player to have a 2020 season before age 21. Like, you hear of all these hotshot phenoms. Bryce Harper, Steven Strasberg was another guy, very young. He's 31 years old, made his big league debut.
31, wow.
Had his first major league hit. And it's funny because after the game, he's signing autographs for 30 minutes afterwards, which to me is one of those really fun stories as well. Yeah. Listen to what he's done. So he's gotten in 9 games, 35 at-bats. He has 11 hits, no home runs yet, batting .314, and also has 3 stolen bases. Wow. So, like, he's actually been pretty productive for the Rockies. I know the Rockies they've been out of the race for the division since, like, mid-May, but it's still a really fun story.
It's a great story.
And then along with, this is obviously your team, Nate Fisher,
Yeah.
who ironically also has been cut since this has happened, but um, the guy drafted right before COVID. The 2020 season, obviously, there's no minor leagues, and only really like the top end minor league guys really got some action of actual play time. So instead of like trying to hold out hope, he decides with a coach of his to get into banking. In Nebraska, he's becomes a loan officer at a bank.
Amazing.
Um, then gets an opportunity to play. He ends up getting called up and throws 3 scoreless innings to help the Mets win a huge game against the Phillies.
As Sunday's game. Yeah. Unbelievable.
So it's one of those things where, and not even just baseball, but life in general. If God's placed something on your heart, just because it doesn't happen right away, doesn't mean it won't happen. Because with these guys, it's a perfect example. 10 years in the minor leagues, most people at like year 5 or 6, they're like, well, this isn't going to happen for me. I'm done. Let me go become a banker. Or COVID happens, and with a lot of guys, you see minor league players who don't make a lot of money anyway are trying to figure out what's next for me, because if I'm not making the major leagues now, it could never happen.
Yeah.
And then just like that, less than 2 years later, he's twirling 3 shutout innings against a huge division rival. Awesome stories, and I hope it encourages people to say, like, keep pursuing what your dreams are. Whether that's dreams that God's placed in you, or even if you don't realize that. Like, God has those things planted in you. You have that mindset of, I'm going to do this. Like, keep going for it, because God'll make it happen.
No doubt. No doubt. I love both those stories. I saw the video, the first player you talked about, when didn't they catch him on video when he got the news that he was being called up?
I think so.
Yeah, and he went crazy. Just the human reaction, or maybe it was when he was there and they were asking him how does this feel, and he choked up, started crying. I think it might have been like after he got, he was getting dressed in the major league locker room. Can't imagine what that feeling is like after you persevered all those years. That's unbelievable. And Fisher will be back, right? They probably put him back in the minors, I think, right?
Yeah, designated for assignment.
Right. So
I feel like at this point in the year, like maybe someone would pick him up, but usually not. Like late August like this, anyone that's DFA'd, they just end up back in the minors usually, unless he decides to go somewhere else.
The only thing that makes me think another team might pick him up is because he's left-handed, left-handed reliever, So, but he pitched great. I mean, he pitched great. I think I was not the only Met fan that was shocked when he came out for not only a second inning, but then a third inning. But Buck Showalter, he shows confidence in people, man. He's just good. I can't imagine the Mets will totally let him go, because he definitely showed like he's got some stuff. All right, man, this has been great. So let me get the music going here on the podcast end. We'll get music going on the video end. And Kenny, take us home.
All right, this is Kenny Squared N.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. Great to be back. We'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Have a phenomenal week. Enjoy there's no preseason football this weekend, right? Because they played their 2 games, or is there? I don't know.
I think there's a third one.
There's a third one? I thought they were down to just 2. Anyway, if you're into watching preseason football, watch it. Kenny, we got to do our football pick probably next week, right?
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you then.